Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about startups. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, have you tried launching your own startup? If yes, please elaborate. If no, why not? So I'm not sure if this counts as launching my own startup, but I suppose in a way it might. When I was still at the university, I got approached by one of my teachers or one of the lecturers, and he had talked to these two guys who had an app idea, and they were looking for someone to develop it for them, basically. And so he thought of me, which was very flattering, and this was a good opportunity. That's kind of why I joined in the first place, even if of course, shares in the company pro bono for pro bono work in the start and all that stuff. But I met up with these two guys, and I thought they were pretty nice guys. They're decent people, and then I thought, well, this is a very good opportunity for me to, well, build up my portfolio, my skills, etc., etc. And so I joined and started working, and I did that as a side thing for, I think, about 4 years, roughly, and learned a lot, I would say, about app development, backend development, Docker, Node.js, and so forth and so forth. So, I mean, my knowledge kind of got, well, it got rocket propelled forward, I would say. And this is honestly, even though this thing I get lost steam after about 4 years, but we did get a bit of interest, which was very nice. We had some venture cup things that we won, and we had interests from a few customers and so forth. So that part went really well. And as a side thing, I've said a few times that one of the best things that you can do if you want to build up your portfolio or have something to talk about or similar sorts of things in an interview, well, this is a perfect thing. This is something that I can always mention, or I can drop into practically every conversation when I have an interview, and it's also something that on my CV looks really nice, and I've had many questions about it, and it communicates the right sort of thing. Even though the project failed, that doesn't really matter to the person who's doing the hiring. What they like to see is that you actually did something that goes beyond the normal stuff. You show initiative and passion and drive and all these sorts of things, right? So this is a hot tip, guys. There are so many entrepreneurs, it's ridiculous how many there are, and that will be a nice segue into the other parts, because since then, this is a few years back now. Since then, I have not I've had a few startup ideas, or people approach me about different things related to a startup, and they have never gotten past my first screening step. Now, what is that? Well, I'm going to tell you something that I learned. It took many years for me to figure this out, because I've had so many instances where I've not done this, and it's always gone the same way. And the way it usually goes is that someone has an amazing idea, everything is amazing about it, it's going to be the next best thing, and they're so hilariously silly that they even go and force you to sign like NDAs, like non-disclosure agreements, and all this bullshit that they think is going to matter, when the real threat to their idea isn't that someone else hears about it. The real threat is that they never have the energy or the passion to see the whole fucking thing through. And that is literally what has happened every single time. You probably know yourself more than a few friends who have this amazing business idea, or they have this amazing thing, whatever, and never really goes anywhere, never really goes beyond their idea phase until they don't talk about it anymore. I'd like to say that this is literally the same sort of phenomenon you see in people who say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna start going to the gym. And the only reason they feel that way is that they watched a movie or saw someone on social media who lost a lot of weight or things like that, and it's a spur of the moment type of thing. It's a passion thing, and it's gonna fizzle out immediately, because real serious products and startups and like all that stuff, guys, it takes a lot of work. And there's a lot of risk involved with it. There's all these other things. It's the same thing with anything when you want to start a business. So the thing that I learned to do was to create a screening process for how I evaluate whether or not I'm going to invest my time in either somebody else's startup idea or my own. It doesn't really matter what it is. And the idea is it's similar to like when you're interviewing someone. And the idea is very simple. The one non-negotiable step that I have is always have a customer with a clear definition of done for the first MVP. What does that mean concretely? Well, it means that I will not write a single line of code for any startup idea until you can point to a customer, someone who is literally saying that I will try this thing out, I have a need for this thing, this seems interesting, and if you can show me something that is sort of the thing that I'm hoping for, let's talk about how we can take this to the next step. That is rule number 1, and you will be surprised at how few of your business friends have any connections. Anybody, like usually the first thing they say when you ask them, okay, so who is the customer? Oh, it's going to be everybody. Okay, yeah, no, thank you. There are products that are for everybody. Until you can show me who our focus group is, or who actually is requesting this, or who is going to evaluate whether or not this has value. Well, until then, I'm not doing anything. And most of them never get past that point. Like you never, like that's the average, like they don't even get to that point. The one time I ever got to actually build an MVP, and we're going to touch on that as well, which is like this was very good. I mean, the whole thing fell through, but it was a very nice way of proving that this thing actually works really well. Was when we had an actual customer. We were saying, oh, we're trying to upgrade one of our systems, and me and my friend, well, he hasn't gone through this journey before, so I told him about the rule, and I said, all right, so the next thing you're going to do now is that you're going to ask for a requirement specification from them, ask for a spec. And he's like, okay, let's do that. It took weeks to just get the first draft out of these people, to like, what is the system actually going to do? And I told them, this is now you getting a very good sensation of how interested are they actually. Because if you have to pull a specification out of the people who are going to get labor for free, that should tell you something about how interested they actually are in this whole thing. It doesn't seem that they're all that interested, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt, because you did find, because he was really into this thing, right? And so he kept on pushing, and he said like, yeah, they're like gonna get back to me, and it took like, he had to poke them like 100 times to just get the fucking specification. And finally he got the specification, and I said, okay, so now we are gonna make an MVP, and it's not even going to be the whole system. And what we did was that we created a React application with no backend, no database, no nothing. We hosted that on like Heroku in a sleepy little Docker container, and the whole thing, like the persistence layer, was just Redux persist. So anything they did was just local to their own computer, and like if they refresh, like if they clear their cache, like, oh yeah, all the content was gone. But that was enough to showcase the idea and like all the interactions. And then I said, this is our MVP now, this is our first draft of a thing, and now we see if we get any feedback on this thing, because now they are the customers. They are going to have to decide if, okay, what more does the system actually have to do until we are willing to pay you to do this thing, or like when we're willing to evaluate and say that, hey, this is actually something we want to try to launch, and so forth. And nobody's gotten past that step. The first line of feedback, and like it's never happened. And the beautiful part about that is that the total time investment for us to figure out that these people are just saying that they want to do this thing, they're not really interested, was, I think, at half a weekend or something like that. That was total. Like, I mean, my friend getting the specification took even longer. I would have given up much further, like earlier than him, if I got that sensation. But we like total invested time was nothing. And trust me when I say this, guys, this is a whole heap better to do than to sit down and try to code the whole fucking system and try to impress people, or try to do the thing that you would do if you just assume that everybody's super into this thing. You have to figure out whether or not they're actually interested. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, I've had my own startup, or rather I've joined a startup. We ran that thing for a few years until it lost steam, or either one of the founders were like, he didn't want to do it anymore, and I really only did it because I thought that it was an interesting project. After 4 years of not being able to launch, like to actually release the thing, because we kept on doing this exact thing, they kept on coming with new features. The scope, like it would never be done. We would never be able to launch it until it was at the scale of Facebook, and that's the problem when you have flaky or very, like, you have talentless stakeholders, because they seem like they think that we are equal. And that's exactly what they thought when we were doing this. They thought that because they were business people, they were in some fashion the same as me, who is the software developer. When I kept telling them that you think that you know this industry, and you think that you know yourself, but I think I know you better, because I know what it means to be an inexperienced stakeholder in IT. You have no clue of how this works, and you will never be happy with the product, practically, until it is literally at the same size as one of these major systems, and you don't understand how much effort it took to get to that point. Facebook didn't look like it does today when it first started, and that's the whole thing that you're not getting. And through that process, I learned to always have a customer with a clear definition of done for the first MVP. Because if you can't even get to that point, there's no point in you sitting down and coding the whole system. So that's like, you get that one for free. It cost me a lot of years to figure that out. And lastly, I do have like my own things that I've been working on and so forth. I'm actually doing something right now, and it's going to go through the same goddamn screening process once again, even though it's with my friends. And I will be, honest to God, even though I think that it's a good idea, I think that it's a valid thing, and I think it would work if you really found a way to figure this thing out, I'm not going to write a single line of code until my other stakeholders, like my other partners or co-founders, prove to me that we can get to that first MVP without having to just basically feel the winds and hope that someone's gonna be interested in the thing when we've spent years developing it, because that is simply not a good idea, at least not in my opinion. Have a great day.